Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before we rank each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 1, Episode 18, When Bad Warlocks Turn Good. Episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of exactly what happens within this episode. So the episode opens on the sisters delivering food to the church where Phoebe is kind of talking to Piper about Josh and whether they're dating because they talk on the phone all the time. And Piper romanticizes being a nun as they don't have to worry about wardrobe, don't have to worry about guys, don't have to worry about even like a roof over their heads, and thinks that maybe they've got it right. And she has been dodging Josh even though he keeps calling, even though they do, according to Phoebe, both like each other, and that's obvious. And then we have Prue talking about Brendan, who she thinks is a volunteer at this point. It then moves on to see Brendan speaking with Father Austin within the rectory, or not the rectory, sorry, within the main church about how he's going to become a priest, but he worries that even that won't outweigh all of the evil that his family and his ancestors have done. And this is when his brothers arrive to ask to speak to Brendan. And Phoebe has gotten a premonition off of Brendan's pen, which shows him being attacked by two warlocks. So the sisters then run over, see Brendan being attacked by the two warlocks, and basically throw them away from him. Prue does with her power. And then Brendan leaves the next day. Prue goes back to find him, and she manages to find him at a horse ranch volunteering with giving children riding lessons. And he comments that her secret's safe with him, and she says that that's what confuses her, as he doesn't seem surprised about it. And they basically have some moments riding horses together, kind of flirting. We then go to the Piper plot with Josh, where Phoebe has decided to interfere with that relationship. And despite Piper saying that she had to work all day and couldn't go out with Josh, Phoebe has invited him to the restaurant for the time between closing for lunch and opening for dinner to let Piper go rock climbing with him while she looks after the restaurant. Piper and him go rock climbing. They have a moment. And then she returns to the restaurant because Phoebe has somehow managed to flood the place. And then we head back to Brendan and Prue, who Prue then walks in a little bit later on a clearly warlockified Brendan, kind of crouching over Father Austin, who has been attacked. She sees that he is a warlock. She chases after him, uses her powers to stop him from running, and then he explains how the warlocks that attacked him were actually his brothers, but they're only his half-brothers. He has a human mother, and he identifies more with his human side and wants to become fully human, and the only way for him to do that is to become a priest. However, there is a prophecy in the coven of warlocks that he was born into of basically the evil power of three, a triad of warlocks who would be the greatest force for evil that the world had ever seen, and he wants out of it. That's again why he is becoming the priest. So Prue decides to believe in him because she's seen the good that he could do, and decides to help protect him from his brothers. His brothers, they want him to be evil, so they basically lure him over to them, try to get him to murder a woman. Prue and the sisters interfere with that. And then the brothers cast a spell on Brendan to bring him to them, and basically says, to prove that you're with us, you have to kill Prue. He then goes to kill Prue, but he can't do it because they formed a bond and a connection, and he manages to stop himself. The brothers are defeated, and Brendan does in fact become a priest, which of course is upsetting to Prue, who had been developing feelings for him throughout the episode. And then we see Piper finally inviting Josh to Quake afterwards to go on a date, having decided to put her bad dating history behind her and move forward, giving Josh a chance. And after rewatching the episode, we now will rank the episodes on our two ranking lists. The first ranking list is a mostly objective list, which is absent emotion and based on set values, but bias and judgment do still apply. And then the personal ranking, which is purely opinion and emotion based on the episode. So with our mostly objective rank values, I've highlighted those that I felt applied to this episode. First, we of course have our single episode supporting character introductions, and this is where we meet Brendan and his two brothers, Paul and Greg, and they're each worth 1 point, bringing us to 3 points total. We then have the supporting relationship development, which is Josh and Piper. As mentioned in summary, we learned that Josh and Piper, since Is There a Woogie in the House, have been keeping in touch by phone calls. They talk all the time. And Phoebe's kind of saying, like, is he your boyfriend? Are you, like, what's going on with that? Thinking that they should be boyfriend and girlfriend by this point. But Piper is reluctant because obviously her dating history isn't great at this point. She's dated a warlock, Jeremy. She's developed feelings for an unattainable ghost. She has Leo, who unfortunately had to leave because he is a white lighter, though she doesn't know that at this point. She just thinks he left for, like, abandoned her for no reason or for work or whatever, but either way, geographically unavailable. She got dumped immediately by the guy at the fundraiser, Lucas, because of the her superstitious nature. So now you have Josh, and it's like, is it worth putting herself out there? She isn't so sure. She doesn't want to take that chance. So she is kind of trying to put off that relationship. We then have Phoebe interfering, basically setting them up on a date because she doesn't know how serious Piper is about wanting to take a break from dating. She thinks Piper's just being afraid and she wants to give her the the extra push that she needs to continue that. Like to continue to grow into a relationship with Josh. So she basically sets up a date for them to go to the gym together, and while she babysits the restaurant at Quake. They say they're going to the gym, but really they end up going rock climbing. And while they're rock climbing, Piper they flirt on the wall a bit, and then Piper falls off and he catches her at the base of the wall, and she comments on talk about falling for a guy. They share a look, that moment where their eyes meet, where they smile at the same time, and she panics and she awkwardly like disentangles herself from his arms, and then she freezes him, calls Phoebe in a panic, and then happens to hear the water in the background. So when Josh unfreezes, she basically says, there's an emergency at the restaurant, I gotta go, and basically abandons him there. And then we don't see much about them two for the rest of the episode until we come to the end after the Warlocks have been defeated and Josh shows up. By this point, Phoebe has realized that Piper was in fact serious about wanting to take a break. So she kind of comments on talk about a guy not being able to take a hint, and she offers to go and handle it for Piper. But then Piper reveals that actually now she's decided to give in and she has invited him herself. And Phoebe, of course, says something along the lines of a you go girl. And then Piper and Josh go and get a table for two at the restaurant. Well, Phoebe then says basically her meddling is in fact a good thing, and Prue asks her to meddle for her as well, since she's just lost a great catch to the priesthood. And then I'm not counting it towards the points here, or actually I will. So there also is kind of like a supporting relationship development between Brendan and Prue. She sees him being a good guy. She thinks he's cute at the beginning. She thinks he's a good guy. She basically goes out on a limb for him when the other sisters, Piper and Phoebe are kind of questioning whether or not they should be helping him, whether he is the innocent they need to save. because he is half warlock. Prue is the one who goes out on a limb. Prue brings him home. Prue lets him sleep in her room while she sleeps with Piper. They go on a romantic horse ride together. They flirt. They do, in fact, share a kiss within the episode as well, basically developing feelings, developing a relationship. When the final confrontation happens, he's unable to kill her because he has developed his feelings. He notes about um, how he is being tested with temptations because he's falling for her. And then before he becomes a priest, he even says of all the sacrifices he has made on his path to fully embracing goodness, it has never felt like such a sacrifice as it did then when he has to give up his feelings for her in order to join the priesthood and fully cure his warlock and evil side. And that is adorable. It's an adorable little relationship. I feel it more like their chemistry more than I do with Piper and Josh in the episode. But our one negative of the episode, which does cancel out the points for this one, is that there is supporting relationship regression or breakup. Obviously, he's joining the priesthood. They are not going to be able to continue seeing each other. And so even the same episode that it started, it also had to end. And so at this point, we're now at 5 points because Prue's relationship basically canceled itself out. But the Josh and Piper romantic development does still count for 2 points. And then the final set of points is 4 points for world building, where we basically learn that there's basically a row coven who has been, much like the Hallowells, preparing for generations for these 3 magical warlock sons to become a triad together, join hands, and become the greatest force evil has ever known. And we also learn that it's been hinted before, like in episode 2, and we do see it again in future episodes, like the first episode of season 4, for example, where it is shown that in the universe of Charmed, churches do have the property of countering evil. In episode 2, obviously, if Piper had been evil, she wouldn't have been able to enter. She was worried about being struck by the church. We also see in the future, beginning of season 4, how gargoyles will react, like gargoyles on the church will react to evil and prevent them from entering. We see that, and there's a few other ones. I will call it out when we get to those episodes, which we will eventually get to. But the point is, in this universe, it is shown that the church has a real power against evil. And one of the powers it does have is obviously if Brendan joins the priesthood, that will destroy his warlock half, which will then allow him to be fully human and fully good, as has been his wont, which he earned through his mother, who was human and obviously a good person to have raised him so well. And this, all told with all the points, gives this episode a mostly objective rank of 9 out of 10. So a brief reminder on our mostly objective rankings so far for season 1. In first place, we have Something Wicked This Way Comes, I've Got You Under My Skin, From Fear to Eternity, Is There a Woogie in the House? That 70s episode, Wicca Envy, Secrets and Guys. This episode is in 8th place, When Bad Warlocks Turn Good. Then we have Dead Man Dating, Feats of Clay, Dream Sorcerer, The Witch is Back, Thank You for Not Morphing, Which Proves It Anyway, The Truth is Out There and It Hurts, The Wendigo, The Wedding from Hell, and then in 18th place, The Fourth Sister. So this episode is one of those examples that is why I have 2 lists. The mostly objective ranking for this episode was a 9. As a viewer, as an audience member, I didn't feel that that was accurate to the way I felt and my opinion on the episode as I was watching it. First off, we have the 2 brothers, Greg and Paul. Paul is a sweetheart. He loves his pet. He's very kind of questioning whether they should be even going after Brendan. He seems very nice to Brendan. And then in the end, he actually sacrifices his own life in order to save Brendan. He's just all around like, he's a full-blooded warlock, but he seems super sweet. He seems like a good guy. What is it called when there's two contrary things in one person? Juxtaposition? I don't think that sounds right. Anyways, the point is, like, he seems like a really good guy, even though he's supposed to be one of the fully evil ones. And then you have Greg, who is what you would expect of an evil warlock, and he would be the leader of this trio if Brendan did end up giving in. And he's incredibly rude and mean to Brendan throughout it. And it's like, why, if you need somebody, are you being so mean to them? Because here's the thing, like, if you're trying to lure someone and be like, come to my side, like that meme that was all over the internet for years. Come to the dark side, we have cookies. He should be offering cookies to Brendan. Be like, look, come here, look at all the perks you're gonna get, look at how great we are, you know? Instead, he's like, let me be really mean to you and hope that brings you over to my side. And while that would work on someone like Naruto, because obviously the village was really mean to him, unrelated reference there, I don't think that would work on most people. Most people, if you're really mean to them, are like, I don't want anything to do with you. And that is what Brendan is like. He's like, I don't want anything to do with you. You're evil. You're mean. I don't, like, obviously, I have no interest in being around you. And I just found that kind of funny that it's like, if you want someone to be on your side, Greg does everything he can except what he should to try to lure Brendan over. And they say like the dark side should be just seductive, and it's like Greg cannot seduce anything. He's mean to the person he needs, then he's like, oh, well, if I can't be mean and get you to join me, I will cast a spell to do it instead. I will try to trick you into it by offering up like a bait. He offers like a woman to sacrifice to try to get him to do that. When that fails, he's like, okay, fine, a spell. And then he casts a spell to basically like brainwash Brendan and bring him to their side. But then he sets him to kill Prue, who is like, all he has to do is kill one innocent, okay? And had Greg not gotten too big for his britches and just had him go and kill an innocent after he did that spell, he would have won because Brendan was brainwashed. Instead, he sends him after the woman he's developing feelings for, like that's going to work, and obviously it does not because he cannot kill the person that he likes right now. So, really, Greg brought his loss on himself because he was an asshole. Paul, however, as mentioned, very sweet. I don't understand why he was a bad warlock because he seemed like a very nice person, at least to his brother. And it's also funny because the way that they get defeated is basically Greg decides, well, if I can't get you to join us, then I'm going to kill you. He throws a knife at Brendan. Paul steps in between. He ends up stabbed with the knife. And then the knife is then sent back at Greg, who also ends up stabbed with the knife. And then both of the brothers poof away because evil cleans up after itself. And we basically are left with Brendan no longer having his brothers to tempt him, ready to join the priesthood, which he does do. Obviously, they had Prue and Brendan falling in love, and it is a cute relationship. They had a lot of chemistry. He was a good-looking man. She's obviously a good-looking woman. They were really cute together, but it was doomed from the start, so it kind of feels like a wasted time. Like you wasted my emotional investment here because it couldn't go anywhere. He's joining the priesthood. That was established from the start of the episode. So the entire flirtation was doomed from the start, kind of worthless in that sense because it never went anywhere. It started as soon as it ended as soon as it began. I don't get the point. I don't. It didn't hit for me, or rather, it would have hit for me had they been able to continue because I felt they had good chemistry, but it was wasted. And then you have Piper and Josh, again, is a good looking man. This was the era where they actually put beautiful people on TV, which I miss in a lot of our modern TV shows very much. But pretty much all the characters in this show are very good looking people, which I appreciate. Anyways, he's a good looking man, but the chemistry between them, it isn't really there. And because it's not really there, I'm kind of like, so this is the relationship we're going ahead with right now for Piper. Meanwhile, Prue, who has amazing chemistry with her partner in this episode, dead in the water. Like I said, I felt like my emotional investments were wasted in this episode. There were also two times within this episode where they showed really big spiders, and I do not like spiders. Well, I don't really have arachnophobia for things on screen because I know it can't impact me, but if I see a spider in real life, I am having a mini heart attack immediately. I cannot handle the spiders. And while they don't bother me so much on screen, the fact that he like literally like picked one up and it was in his hand and then he gave it to a child to go and let out in the stable so that it would go free so it wouldn't die. And this child who had just shown like fear towards the spider. I'm like, I get the, be kind to all creatures and he is trying to be a priest to show his goodness, but I'm like, do not touch the spider, just like let it off onto the ground. Like, why are you handing it to the child after you've grabbed it? This is crazy. And then to show that the spell towards his brothers had started to work, there was a giant spider right next to Prue's bed that he squishes into the wall. And thank goodness, because I do not let any insects live in my house. If you enter into my territory, you die. That is, if you are an insect, you're done. So I am the type to kill the insects. I do not let them outside because if they come back in, then I just have to do it all over again. And I don't care about insects enough to want them to live. I am not that far gone with the love of nature to say, yes, come into my house. If you are in my house and you are an insect, you better be prepared to die. That being said, obviously it's creepy that there was a spider right next to her bed. That is like my worst nightmare, to wake up and find a spider in my bed. I cannot think of anything worse, honestly, because I do not like spiders. So the spiders, they put me off a little bit too. Then we have Andy, and Andy's behavior is kind of iffy in this one. Basically, Father Austin was Andy's priest, who had given him his first communion, who he goes to for confessionals, somebody he has a strong emotional bond and connection to from childhood to the present day. And as that is the case, when Father Austin is attacked and he feels that Brendan was the one responsible, he is, of course, on the hunt, and it's personal this time. So he hears about Prue from the girl who's about to be sacrificed. She basically says that one of them, the people who kidnapped her, one of them had spoken about Brendan, who they were trying to make kill her. And then Brendan had also called Prue's name when she had entered to stop him. So Andy comes over to the house and he is very rude. But it is understandable rudeness because of his emotional connection to the father, because he thinks that Prue may be harboring the person who attacked him, because it is so personal to him. Understandable, he is upset. But he is very rude, especially to Prue, saying no free passes this time. If I find out you're harboring this guy, basically implying threat. And at the end of the episode, to be fair, he finds out from the father, Austin, who woke up in the ICU, that it was not Brendan who attacked him, but in fact it was his brothers. And so Andy, of course, goes to apologize to Prue, which I think is a good thing. If you are making a mistake like that, if you are acting that way and you find out that you were wrong, you should take responsibility, you should apologize. But I felt the behavior was a bit off-putting. And even at the end, he also hints that he kind of knows why she was involved, which again implies that Andy is getting closer to their secret and is probably going to find that out soon. Now that was a lot of negatives, honestly, for this episode, in my opinion, just like for me personally, it wasn't to my taste. One last negative was I'm never really fond of religious themes in anything. It kind of makes me a little bit uncomfortable. It's not a discomfort that I can't push through for something that's worth watching, like in the case of Charmed or Supernatural or any of those other series that do bring in a religious element. But typically, I don't like religious themes in medias, and it does make me a little bit uncomfortable to watch. So again, personally, wasn't overly fond of that. There were a couple of the positives. Obviously, Phoebe, when babysitting the restaurant, causes a flood because a tap breaks. She doesn't know where the water shutoff valve is. It floods the sink. It starts to flood the restaurant. And it's just kind of funny the way that she's trying to deal with this and hide it from Piper, who's rock climbing. That was a good little comedic break from the otherwise rather dramatic and serious episode. And then there's also the aesthetic of the ritual sites, like when they are sacrificing the girl, like the altar that they set up with all the candles, and then when they cast the spell to reunite with their brother and kind of brainwash Brendan, it's very aesthetic. Though anytime that they're doing a ritual on the show, it tends to be pretty aesthetically pleasing, aesthetically interesting. And so I want to call that out. But as I mentioned, like overall, wasn't my cup of tea. Not a fan. I decided on my personal ranking that it was a 2 out of 10 episode, which is one of the lower scores that I've given throughout the season. And so, as a reminder of our season 1 rankings so far, in first place we have Is There a Woogie in the House? Dead Man Dating, The Witch is Back, From Fear to Eternity, that 70s episode, Wicca Envy, The Truth is Out There and It Hurts, Something Wicca This Way Comes. Ninth place is Dream Sorcerer, Feats of Clay, Thank You for Not Morphing, Which Proves It Anyway, Secrets and Guys, I've Got You Under My Skin, The Wendigo, and then this episode falls into 16th place, When Bad Warlocks Turn Good. And then in 17th place, The Wedding from Hell, and always last place is The Fourth Sister. Which brings us now to our final segment, which is our series ranking so far, where we will be ranking each of the seasons against each other. So far for season 1, we are adding another 9 to the mostly objective ranking, which brings us to 126 out of 220. And then we are adding just 2 to the personal ranking, which brings us to 115 out of 220. With that, we've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 1, Episode 18, When Bad Warlocks Turn Good. And like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.